A niche thing explores subcultures around us that make for great interests and hobbies. These range from topics like affordable art to exploring the world of coffee, hi-fi, sneakers, watches, vintage fashion, where the list goes on and on. It's a podcast with something for everyone. So let the conversation begin. On today's episode of A Niche Thing powered by Kodak Privy League program, I talk about the evolution of fine dining and what fine dining for contemporary Indians is with two of my friends from the F&B industry, Roshni Bajaj, who's been a food journalist for the last 17 years, and Yash, who runs the Bombay Canteen, Pedro, Bombay Sweet Shop, award-winning restaurant that I would say now. So yeah, we'll get to the conversation right after these short messages. Roshni and Yash, welcome to the show. Yash is giggling.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Before we begin, a little bit about both of you, please. Rosh, we'll start with you.
So I have been a food and travel writer since 2005. And it started with food and then eventually got layered with travel. I used to work at Sunday Midday as a features writer and found myself doing more and more food stories, and my editor seemed to like them. So I landed up doing more food stories, and then Time Out got in touch with me and asked me to become their food editor and their shopping editor. After which I went to culinary school in 2010 for a year, not because I wanted to become a chef or open a restaurant, but because I wanted to be able to understand the industry and how it works back of house and understand what it be able to write about food with that knowledge. When I came back, I started a column with Mumbai Boss, which did really well. I was a restaurant critic at Hindustan Times. Then after that, I had a column at the Daily Pow. I continued writing for Vogue, where I was contributing editor, Condé Nast Traveler, Architectural Digest, and then pretty much a whole bunch of other publications, including The Hindu and Mint Lounge, the established as the years have gone by.
And I might say you're one of the very few people that I would actually listen to when it comes to any of this.
Thank you.
Yash.
I was just, as she was talking, I was thinking this podcast is going to be on one side of the person being able to articulate so well, and the others as like, how does she know the journey so well? Because every time I do a new founders meet for our employees, I think my story to why we did this changes. So quickly, I did hotel management from Goa. I don't know why I did it, but I started working as a server at a 5-star hotel in Bombay at an Italian restaurant. Did that for 3 years. Then did my master's in hospitality from Cornell. Started working in a bar in Chicago. Then ran a jazz bar in Singapore. Became a poolside manager. I was shooing off birds and giving cold towels to people. When my eventual co-founder, Samir, called me saying, let's do something. We moved back to India, decided we wanted to open Bombay Canteen. We were lucky to have Chef Lloyd with us. Then we did Pedro and then Bombay Sweet Shop. And as of 3 days ago, we just launched Enthu Cutlet as well, which is our first foray into an online food magazine, which Rosh is the editor for.
Yeah, that's a new thing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can I get the website, Instagram, like for people to find out?
It's on Instagram and on Twitter as Enthu Cutlet Mag, and the website is enthukutlet.com.
What was the idea of starting a publication though? Because that's a pretty different step for a restaurant group to take.
So as Hunger Inc., I think in 8 years, we've got 3 very different concepts: Bombay Canteen, Pedro, and Bombay Sweet Shop. And what I like to say is, more than the food, I think what really makes us stand out is when you're sitting in the restaurant or in the shop. We are able to create an environment where people are having conversations across the table with great food there. But it's just the starter of conversations. And it always brings about memories and stories. We've been able to do that well within the 4 walls of a restaurant. And that was our community then. And for us, it was, if we take those 4 walls away, how do you bring these stories onto a medium where everyone can read it, everyone can be a part of it, and build the community? 3 hours ago, I was saying that people have diced the word community. No one knows community means, but I'm going to keep throwing that word out. And that's how Enthu Cutlet came about. To be honest, Samir wanted to do this 5 years ago, but we didn't know what that meant to us. And I'm glad we took our time with it. And I think during COVID, obviously, we had a lot of time on our hands and we went back to the drawing board on the things we've never done. And the research started towards it. So the team's been on board for a good year and a half. And it's a really great bunch of people who've helped us, including Roshni. And I think we're just so happy to have launched it.
I just read the article by Chef Manu on truffle. And if anyone likes truffle, actually,
Truffle oil.
truffle oil, and irrespective of which side team truffle oil or not, should definitely need to check out that article for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Getting right into the topic of today's episode, I want to talk about how Indians eat out and how's the fine dining space evolved. And why I want to ask that question is because I think fine dining, what it was maybe 10 years back, or what it was that we remember growing up in our teens and going out for that really special fine dining sort of a meal to a hotel, that's drastically changed, right? So
Yep.
I think, Roshni, you would have had the most perspective on this.
What is fine dining even anymore? I mean,
Exactly.
it's kind of, I think the association with the words fine dining now, like the emotion that comes with it is boring. And I feel like fine dining sort of it's gone, like it's my parents' generation thing to do, right? It's not my generation thing to do. It is something that on my 7th birthday, my 8th birthday, my parents wanted to take me out for a treat. They would take me to, like maybe
Zodiac Grill?
Shamiana. No.
You have good parents. Too.
Shamiana. And I mean, or they would take me to, say, for example, China Garden, which at that time was considered fine dining. I think it had just opened or something. And I remember sitting in China Garden, maybe like my 7th or 8th birthday, and like running my hands over the buttery sort of couches and thinking, my goodness, this is like so posh. But I feel like what's happened now with hotels and that like association of fine dining with hotels has become dated, has become like it's become a bit fuddy-duddy. We don't think about hotels as a place to go and eat well anymore. You just go there for like if you want to impress somebody, you want to take a client, you want to have a business meeting. They've become places of convenience. But if I want to really eat well, I'm not going to enter a 5-star hotel anymore. If I'm going to do it also, it's going to be for that like 2 or 3 dishes that I'm nostalgic about, or like maybe if I hear that something amazing's come up. Weirdly enough, if a restaurant opens outside a 5-star hotel, I'm more likely to be excited about it than inside a 5-star hotel. And I've heard of a couple of like really great restaurants opening in central Bombay, like in the Parel area, in the hotels over there. And I keep thinking I'll go there one day. But to be honest, so far that day has not come. When I think about actually going on the day, I'm like, not today, maybe next week. They've lost their sheen. They've lost their sort of like spark. They're not interesting anymore, to be honest. And with that price point, you better impress me. I mean, with like if your menu prices are like already sky high and then you're going to add taxes, like 5-star hotel taxes, 5-star hotel service charge, it's got to be something else. And I'm not finding that anymore.
There are 2 things here that I want to pick on. One is the word posh, right, that you used.
Yeah.
Again, I think for us, for our generation, posh and fine dining is not necessarily linked, right? You could
No.
be in a very comfortable environment and be fine dining. Since you worked at hotels and now you have your own restaurants, which have been on most of the well-known lists in Asia as well, what was your perspective when you started to even think of starting a restaurant? Because you would have done so much research on this, right? Like, what was the thought process there?
So, like taking from what Rosh was saying, fine dining in India is pretentious and intimidating. That's all it is, right? But actually, like fine dining it is not an environment. Like, people mistaken it for environment, but should be for the quality of product and what I come there for. So when we were opening like our first restaurant, and we always say it, we've always been lucky as well for the heartwarming response we've got. But we went in saying we want to create an approachable and accessible restaurant, right? We want someone who walks in maybe wearing a suit because he has a meeting close by. But at the same time, someone walks in wearing shorts. They both feel comfortable in that space. So a lot comes in through the way you design it, but also when it comes to the food and how do you make it fun, casual, but at the same time, just because I'm not a fine dining restaurant does not mean my quality of product needs to drop. So for us, when it comes to the product itself, it's also a lot of research that goes in and making sure what we are putting on the table, may it be a drink, may it be food, may it come from the pricing, the size of the dish to the portion size. A lot of thought goes into it by seeing what is the context of India, what works here, and flavor wise what works and what doesn't intimidate you as a person. And if you see that in Bombay Canteen's perspective, I'll give you the easiest example is year one of Bombay Canteen, we had a dish called Arbi Tuk, right? With every one of us has eaten, right? And I always tell people like the reason that dish worked is it has khatta, sweet, like that namkeen flavor. It's chaat basically, right? But what was great was you had crunchy textures, you had fresh rat tail radish, moogri, salsa on top of it, the chili yogurt which gave the spice, right? That dish is not on the menu anymore, but there is now a Seabass ceviche safe puri on the menu, right? When I look at it, if I put that dish on the menu 8 years ago, it wouldn't have worked, would have made us look extremely pretentious, right? But now people know what Bombay Canteen stands for. And that's how our philosophy has evolved. So it's at that time, you need the right time, right place, and thinking at that time, but evolving over time to make sure that for me, fine dining should be fun dining instead, right? Where every food tells me a story and leaves me with a big smile on my face.
Yeah, I think now for food to be worth the return on investment in terms of the time and money you put into that meal when you go out to eat with somebody, it has to be more interesting than it has to be fancy. I think fancy has now become kind of like a bad word. And interesting, if I don't want to go out and be impressed with a fancy meal, I want to be impressed with an interesting meal. Like, what is this meal? Do I want to have more of it when I leave? Am I feeling satisfied? And you don't really get much of that in the typical traditional way that we think of fine dining. You don't get that much anymore in the city, or I think elsewhere in the country as well.
The safe puri example you gave, I think 8 years back, if you opened Bombay Canteen with that, it also would have looked like that fusion thing for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
The only thing left would have been some dry ice underneath it. And
people used to ask us, "Aap nitrogen kyun nahi dal rahe ho khane mein?" It's like,
thank God the nitrogen phase is over.
You think it is? It's
dry
still,
ice.
I think it's because you don't go to those restaurants. It still exists.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of our restaurants in India are full of gas.
Just ending that whole 5-star conversation, I think last couple of times I've traveled, at least to Singapore and all, there is a lot of relevance at a lot of 5-star hotels. Look at something like Andaz in Singapore, Mr. Stock on the rooftop. That bar is just spectacular. Everywhere, drinks, vibe, decor, everything, right? And in India, whenever someone asks us, especially about Bombay, we can give an example of Bombay. Anytime someone says, where do you want to go eat? I can only think of non-fine dining, non-5-star hotel options.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's exciting. But is this also because there's a lot more young blood in this space, a lot more chefs, entrepreneurs, and there's no bureaucracy of a F&B manager, director, purchase manager on top of all of that, right?
Yeah.
I would do a whole 2-hour podcast on this because I've lived that life 3 years here in India. And after that as well, when I was with the hotel chain in Singapore for another 3.5 years. To answer your question, like imagine the Manhattan bar at Regent Hotel, right? When I first heard about it in Singapore, I also couldn't believe that this can happen in a hotel, right? The bureaucracy in India is unimaginable, but the challenge is in India, we still go to a hotel restaurant, not we. There's a certain clientele that goes to those restaurants to be seen and to be away from certain people who go to casual restaurants. And that clientele still exists. Like if you go to one of the South Bombay restaurants, it's full for dinner. And it really like pisses me off because it's expensive and not great food. But people are there because their fathers went there. They struck deals there. Like a lobby of a hotel in Bombay is where all government deals get struck, I feel. Like you just see it happening. So it's just, from the hotel manager's point of view, he or she is thinking, why do I need to evolve if I'm still making money? If pretentious people are still coming and spending that money. Whereas I think the world over, like even if you look at London, the kind of restaurants and bars, like the Artesian which was there, it's happened because people of all genre want to have, in the end, a quality meal. It does not depend on the environment or a hotel or a casual or a freestanding. It's just the understanding of what value is and what a quality drink and food is. And I feel that's going to happen in India only when we as people or we as start realizing that there are a lot of young people getting into it, which is great. But also, I feel a lot of them are coming in with seeing something in a Scandinavian country and being like, how do I replicate this here? Whereas thinking, okay, I learned technique and I learned something there in the context of India and its ingredients. How do I make the best experience here? So I think what you said is right, but I don't think hotels here are going to change.
I don't see hotels that change as well. I think even just the point that a lot of restaurants will now try and make the ingredient the hero or the produce the hero. I don't see hotels do that.
So I'm guessing you remember, Yash, there was like the eating out was so synonymous with eating at a hotel that a lot of the small little chotu restaurants and gullies in Bombay used to call themselves hotel whatever, right? Hotel
Yeah.
Prakash, hotel whatever, right? And there was when somebody like named their restaurant hotel whatever, they automatically made it sound like we're going to give you like good food here and good service. But now, actually, I feel like the people who are going to hotels are going to hotels, like he said, because that's, I feel like the last bastion of my bap in dining. That's the only place where people do my bap to you in dining, because now a lot of the service is not about my bap anymore. And I feel it's exactly this, is that the people who want to go there and get a power trip, an ego trip about like the way that they're being served and then saying, so how are you, whatever. And it's very different from the way it happens in like the more successful independent restaurants, where you will still get great service, but it won't be subservient.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's sort of the shift that's happening, which is why our generation that doesn't like that my bapness is sort of eschewing hotel restaurants. They'd rather go for like, a meal which is really fun and the server can like explain things really well to you, and it's almost like somebody, if you met them outside the restaurant, you could hang out with.
Yeah. I've seen this happen sometimes, that the people who are serving you food, you also realize that these are people you could have gotten a drink with, right? It's that sort of a vibe. And I'd any day prefer being addressed with my name if they know me, if I'm regular there, than being sir, right?
Yeah. A lot of like what has happened in Bombay over the last, say, 10, 12 years is that the city has become increasingly insular. So this is something that we used to talk about at Time Out, is when the mill lands went from centers of production to centers of consumption, right? This is where the city's commerce used to sort of like the workers used to go. And now workers can't afford a lot of the restaurants and the mills. What's happened is that the people who go to hotel restaurants or even like go to the fancier places come from a generation where they everybody's very insular, right? You're living in your silos. You're getting out of your apartment. You're getting into your air-conditioned car. You're going to the mall. You go to the multiplex. You're going to the restaurant. You're going to the hotel. Very few people are engaging with the streets. And this is something that we used to bring up a lot, even when it started in 2007, 2008. The hotel there's a very different generation that sort of insulates themselves that way. And our generation, which still likes to engage with the city, be part of the culture, go for gigs, eat street food, art festivals, go to Kotachiwadi, things like that. And then there's a very distinct split. And I feel like that generation sort of like, where this generation's growing and that one's sort of fading away slowly. So I don't know what the future of hotel restaurants will be. I'm hoping that they evolve with it, but yeah.
Like what Yash said, I'm not convinced that in India they'll evolve though. Talking about price points, right? At least if I look at Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, even if I start to bifurcate fine dining versus casual dining in terms of price points, that line is becoming very close though. So that for me again is the thing, that fine dining doesn't, just because it's an expensive meal, it may not be fine dining. If I go to Bombay Canteen versus if I'm going to, give me a name of a more fine dining sort of a place in Bombay.
Yash can't think of a place that's
Without
not fine
pissing
dining.
someone off, I'm just trying to say that Yash say something not stupid. Non-hotel?
The point I'm trying to come to is that today, any good food that we would go to, right, in Bombay, any good restaurant, it's ballpark around the same price.
But okay, let's do a direct comparison. Wasabi.
Hey, you can't throw in
Versus-
wasabi in
Wasabi
this.
No,
I'm just saying.
Wasabi is a different
Till
league.
the longest time, Bombay didn't have a good Japanese restaurant. Now we have Izumi.
Yeah.
Like all three of us go there.
I will 100% go to Izumi
Exactly,
over
right?
wasabi.
Yeah.
Like wasabi is like buying iPhone 14 for dinner, right? Right? You can't like for me that is a comparison. Why? Because it pisses me off that a restaurant which charges $2,000 a head in Bombay, Japanese, is on an Asia's best list. A Japanese restaurant in India,
In Bombay.
in Bombay. Not even like miraculously somehow that person is going out finding the best fish out of India and like somehow removing the mercury from it and serving it as sushi. No, it's coming frozen from Japan
Yeah.
and on Asia's best list. It still like bothers me, as you can see. So that was my comparison, because Izumi is something which I feel changed Japanese food for all of us in Bombay. We used to
Yeah.
miss it so much, right? All of us, when we used to travel, first thing, sushi khao. Now you don't need to.
Sushi and ramen.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's 15 minutes away on like a delivery platform.
You took it to wasabi. I wasn't expecting wasabi as the comparison, but yeah, that and you could perhaps eat at Izumi how many times to get to the same amount as a wasabi.
The reason I
dinner.
did, so I somehow, like a very prominent person, industrialist we met in Delhi, just like you, I think must have been a hotel lobby again, and to someone we knew them, and like we tell them, right, we own Bombay Canteen, and he was like, oh, I've never been. Whenever I'm in Bombay, I dine at Wasabi, and I was like, you could take your jet and fly to Kyoto and have better sushi.
Yeah.
How does it make sense? It doesn't. Like, for me, it just doesn't make sense.
This is the other thing about hotel. This episode can be titled "Why 5-Star Hotels Suck," but they'll also be so proud that we fly our fish in from
Yeah.
these parts of the world.
Apparently, some tuna goes from Sri Lanka to Tsukiji market and then comes back
Comes
to
back?
India.
I'm sure.
I will not be surprised.
Yeah. I didn't answer your question, but depends like how you define like this. You're so right about the pricing. Like sometimes, like I have a meal at Bombay Canteen and I go back and I was like, shit, we are getting expensive. And then I actually check the bill and I'm like, oh, I had 5 whiskey sours, so it should be expensive, right? But I'm not saying Bombay Canteen is not expensive. It's going to be expensive. For what we always say with our pricing is, if you really wanted to have a cheap meal, you could, or you could like spend a lot. But I feel like there are like, so we went to New York. We dined at Atomics, which won best restaurant in the US. It's fine dining without being pretentious. Like, it is a counter restaurant. The sommelier is coming to you and not just telling you about the wine. He's explaining to you about the beer that they have and why it's so good, right? The lady who runs the restaurant, she comes in and she just opens this beautiful bag where you can choose these different beautifully graphically designed chopsticks, just making your meal
Yeah.
like, comfortable and
Yeah.
fun. But the eye for detail, so I went with Nico and she's left-handed, and he saw that she's left-handed. He just took the small chopstick stand and moved it onto her left side. It's that's what you want in fine dining, is the eye for detail, is when you know that that person is paying attention to you and to each guest differently. I feel in India, we always look at meals by how much we pay for it and not the
That was
experience.
actually my point. Like,
Yeah.
just because you've paid more doesn't mean anything today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, he's talking about attention to detail, right? You go regularly to wasabi. I mean, I'm not like busting on wasabi at all. But they do a couple of dishes that are great. I've had them like 5 years ago. But you get your personalized chopsticks. And a lot of people get like really excited about the fact that I'm a regular at wasabi and I get personalized chopsticks. I go to Sanjay Singh Sandwich Wala and he looks at my face and he knows how to make my sandwich immediately. Like, he looks at my face. There's not even, we need to make eye contact. I don't even need to say a word. He knows what to do. That's attention to detail. You don't need to pay a lot of money for it.
Yeah. Even at a Woodside, I'll go there straight away ask Nipa. And I was like,
Yeah.
let's start with that.
Yeah.
Attention to detail is a very important aspect, right, of fine dining. Again, I see that happen a lot with independent restaurants than the more older five-star restaurants in the country. I'd had this personal experience in Champagne. We were at a restaurant and this will sound like a big first world issue, but we were fed up of champagne beyond a point. So we asked them, do you have any beers? And they had 3-4 beers produced in Champagne, craft beers. And that was the whole point, that even if I had the audacity to ask for a beer at a fine dining restaurant in Champagne, they had
Yeah.
good options to serve me. Just to be clear, there are also some good 5-star experiences. We're not just taking the case of all 5-star hotels.
Yeah. A couple of places that have sort of revived themselves, changed the decor, changed the name, changed the menu, have actually done a pretty good job of it. Like last night, I went to Obar at the Oberoi, and it was actually really fun. The kind of people who come over there, the kind of drinks that they make, the way they've made the bar look. It's completely transformed from what it was. Like this sort of, it had become a little cheesy and like flashy and random with a bar singer. And now it's not. It's not any of those things. It's actually quite elegant,
Yeah.
without being stuck up.
You actually brought about a very good point. Obar is one of those very few places that have actually come up in our friend circle conversations, where if you're towards town, they're like, yeah, let's get a drink there, especially around sundowner or something. It's a great vibe.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And if you're just going there for that one drink, it still doesn't feel like you sort of broke your bank account.
To me, when it comes to drinks and that fine dine sort of a hotel, for me, when it comes to drinks at a five-star hotel, the name that I can immediately think of is Kopitas, Bangalore. They've done a great job since day one. Really good bar program, superbly run.
Kopitas is Four Seasons, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a culture driven down by Four Seasons. I feel that'll happen in Bombay very soon. I can't get the name. When the Four Seasons restaurant at the lobby level opened maybe 12 years ago, I was still working with the other hotel. And walking in, that felt like a better restaurant than I'd ever seen in my life. I grew up in Pune, so I hadn't traveled at all before I started working in hotels here. So when I used to work in a hotel restaurant, I used to feel like, wow, this is what Italian food actually must be like. So when I got to travel much more, and I was like it was complete joke. But going back to the vibe thing, I think it's something we take, like Bombay Canteen we recently renovated as well, is how do you evolve the space in a way that you don't take away its approachability. That especially for Bombay Canteen, it was hanging on our heads like, we are taking something that's touchwood doing well, and we're still taking that risk of changing the design completely. And it's about also like just choosing the right materials, right? Like, I don't know India's fascination with Italian marble. It might be like that fish from Colombo where it's not coming from Italy. But like just using the right materials, the right wood to give the warmth. I think aesthetically, India's design has so much, right? Like such great cement tiles we get here, and just using them in your design. I've seen a lot more better designed restaurants now coming, which is so much better.
Yeah.
Because earlier every restaurant used to be designed to be a nightclub,
Yeah.
right? It seemed like David Guetta was designing all our restaurants.
It's still happening.
Yeah.
There are restaurants now, and I'm like, I went on a dry day in the middle of the week, and I was like, what's with the Avicii? But okay, it's still happening, and they're very generic
Yeah.
in their clubbiness.
I've never understood that. How can you be a fine dining place with loud music at dinner service? If it's at 12 or something, I can still understand. Happens a lot in Bombay and Delhi, especially Delhi.
Yeah.
Think we know why.
The other thing that I found that restaurants, very, very few restaurants get right in Bombay or like elsewhere in India is lighting. I mean, what's with the flat, sort of washed out lighting that a lot of there's no so much of a restaurant's vibe and decor and mood can be built with good lighting, creating a sort of an atmosphere which feels fun or romantic or sexy or lively or just makes everyone look good and makes the
Yeah.
food look good. It's how hard. I mean, there are amazing lighting designers in India since at least the last 15 years. Like I know I have like spoken to a few of them, but I feel like people don't invest in lighting. And if you get the lighting right in a restaurant, I feel like lingering. I feel like staying there for longer because I'm in a headspace. It creates a headspace. Like it puts me in it takes me away from like it's a temporary escape from life, right?
And something easy to do. It's not
Absolutely.
that. I really like the lighting in Bombay Canteen.
The new Bombay
The new
Canteen.
one,
I'll
yeah.
be honest.
The new
OG Bombay Canteen fucked up the lighting.
The new Bombay Canteen with the lamps and like,
Yeah.
there's a lot more finesse to the new one. It's not pretentious by any standards, but it's a lot more polished.
So the way we say it, I always say don't design a restaurant for yourself. Like that's a lot of the problems with the restaurants here is मुझे एक restaurant चाहिए जहाँ पे मैं दोस्तों के साथ Avicii बजा सकता हूँ. That's how business plans are made in this country for restaurants, right? Bombay Canteen 1.0, to be honest, like Ayaz did a phenomenal job of designing this restaurant, which translates beautifully throughout the day. You come in for lunch, It seems like a daylight vibe. And actually, we don't get a lot of natural light. We were supplementing it through artificial light coming from the outside. And at night, we used to dim down the lights, but the lights did not have that sense of privacy or that we normally expect. For me, what changed it was when we started designing O Pedro, and I met a lighting consultant for the first time and said, wow, this profession exists. And that his name's Lyle, and he explained it to me. For the new Bombay Canteen, it was all Shonan, who's done Bombay Sweet Shop as well. And the way she's designed the lights, like we still have that beautiful transition. Like if you come for lunch, it's nice and bright, but at night, it's got that sense of privacy, the warmth from the light lamps that we've put up. For me, this time it was more a bit selfish, where I want a bar where I can sit for a couple of hours, have the same cocktail. I don't want to experiment. I want to have a whiskey sour again and again and again, consistently. But that inviting and warmth of the bar keeps me there. And that's, I think, what the lighting has done this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And say, for example, you go for a date or you go to hang out with your friends and you feel like the lighting's making everyone look good, making the food look good. You want to stay longer. There were so many places that were like either lighting very obviously for Instagram, and then there were others where I was like, if you want somebody to Instagram your food, then your lighting is not helping this at all.
There were some restaurants, again, this whole craze was happening a few years back, which are like India's most Instagrammable restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the other thing is awards. We were talking about awards. And I was like, if you finally splice anything enough, there is an award for it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like best casual Cantonese in West Ghatkopar under 1,000 rupees
Yeah,
a
yeah.
head.
We won that.
That's a birthday party.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were talking about how like there's amazing awards given to restaurants, and you're like, how are they getting it? It's been spliced. Awards are another story. Sometimes you feel like the awards have been spliced for that restaurant.
Gosh, if I start to get de-invited, if that's a word, from
F&B events.
F&B events and awards, that's because of you.
I'm not saying all awards.
Not all awards.
Most
Not
awards.
all awards.
We've also been to some of these awards for where the food's just terrible. And you're
Yeah, and I'm like,
you're doing a restaurant award, man.
Yeah.
How important is, since you spoke about the bar, and for me personally, I really like getting a drink at the bar first before perhaps going on to a table for the meal. How much important has the bar menu become in the last 3-4 years?
Yash is the guy to answer that.
Super important. And we've gone through that learning curve. And I think at some part you've been part of it, where we
Yes.
made those Old Monk cocktails as well.
Yeah.
And I'll quickly give you a quick summary for us. How it happened is Samir moved from New York, I moved from Singapore. So we'd seen these cocktail menus in where we were working and been very alcohol forward, small menus. And we came to Bombay, and Demi worked on our first menu. And for me, that's still one of the best menus we worked on. But they were alcohol forward. Like we had a martini called Rice and Spice, where the vodka was sitting with rice for the longest time. And we had a little bit of the spice was actually coming from a little bit of cardamom, very little. It was a beautiful crisp martini. That menu, it was a regular menu, did not do well for us. And then we started looking at the context of it is we've all grown up on sugared up mojitos and Long Island iced teas. And then you suddenly have these extremely alcohol forward cocktails. That was one. But the aha moment for us was we had a Christmas menu which sat on the table, and it opened and the Christmas tree opened. And people were really interacting with that menu. And so we said, why not make the act of ordering a cocktail much more fun? And hence we came up with cocktail books. And our number of people ordering cocktails went up. So then we were like, okay, people are ordering cocktails. Now let's focus more on the type of cocktails we put on there. I feel at Bombay Canteen, it was a learning experience, and at O Pedro, we got it quite spot on. But now the pressure is much more. I just finished a cocktail menu tasting for O Pedro, and I was like, this does not work. We can't do this because just the expectations are so high, right? It's a huge part because literally for a good restaurant, your drinks are going to be 55% of your revenue, right? And good cocktails is a reason to go out. Like I know people who will write to me saying, we go to Bombay Canteen because of the consistency of cocktails and because of Harish who's there at the bar and I'll have a great conversation with him, right? That for me is when it's perfect, right? So we do spend a lot of time on it, and I feel earlier you could get away with having bad cocktails. I think now it's a necessity.
Yeah, I think it's pretty equal. That split of how the food and drinks are, it's pretty important.
We're not there yet, but my big, huge problem with beverage programs in India is how I feel like people who are going out to drink are being treated like children. So then, like, there is a lot of, it's very sugary. There's a lot of tickiness to a lot of the beverage programs, which I feel like we need to sort of grow into more elegance and sophistication and more innovation. I'm almost always disappointed by cocktails at restaurants, and I just don't even bother to have them anymore. Bar snacks, on the other hand, if a restaurant has designed a fantastic chakna or bar snack menu, I'm probably going to have half my meal off that. That's ridiculously important. I feel like it's massively underestimated and not paid enough attention to. Is the kind of snacks that you design to have, even if I'm not drinking with my fresh lime soda or if I'm having it with like a beer.
Give me some examples that you've really liked.
I mean, my gold standard from like my early journalism days is that bar called Ambience. Yeah. Which used to have murukku with Sichuan sauce. It was damn good. I'm like, if you can satisfy me like that, like where I'm going to the restaurant sometimes for the like I'm going to go drink beer at Ambience because of the chakna is so good, right? It's like that. And I don't know if I'm like maybe mixing up like the chakna because it was way back, like 10 years ago and before the pandemic. And a lot of my memories are like fuzzy from after pandemic, like time warp. But like the chintus were really fun. There's about like for example, clubs do a really good chakna. The Harbour Bar does a really fun chakna platter.
Harbour Bar Taj.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter. The category doesn't matter. You can go to a dive bar, you can go to a 5-star hotel bar, you can go to a fun casual restaurant. If the bar snacks are fantastic, then I know that you've really thought about your beverage program, that you've thought about your bar menu.
Chintus, since you mentioned, are these chaknas at Bombay Canteen.
Yeah.
And Harbour Bar is the first bar in Bombay.
License 001,
First, at the Taj Mahal Colaba.
But to your cocktails conversation, do you think, I feel the cocktail trajectory in India, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the last 3 years, I feel has accelerated.
I completely agree.
Like, it's like Indian food
Yeah.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, our expectations were so low then of Indian food.
Yeah.
But now when someone opens an Indian food restaurant, you expect it to be on point, being regional, seasonal ingredients.
Yeah.
Because it's just like people have evolved, because a lot of restaurants started doing it well. And that conversation started, I feel, with cocktails and just with the right people who worked abroad and coming back, like the likes of Arijit, Pankaj, who've worked all over the world and are coming back and have brought those right practices with them. I think it's just going to get better from here.
Yeah. We're getting there. We're not there yet, though.
Never.
Yeah. But it's true. Like, I feel like, how Indian food now, a restaurant that serves Indian food brings a little bit of the restaurant's personality and the chef's personality on the plate, right? Or like the identity or the character of the restaurant. You can like sometimes have a bite of food blindfolded and you just know which restaurant it comes from because there's a signature style to it. I mean, I feel like now there are so many places supplying rolls. Your butter chicken roll, and every place that's doing a butter chicken roll has its own sort of mark of this is how we do it, right? That it would be great to have that coming in more into alcohol and more into cocktails, more into the bar menu. There's been a lot of like copycat, Me Too, sort of money porn, as we say. Say, for example, the Negroni is doing well. Now everybody's doing a Negroni, right?
Yeah.
But
Not
some people
just
are doing
a Negroni,
terribly.
a barrel-aged Negroni,
Yeah.
which didn't sell yesterday, so we'll put it in a barrel and sell it a year later.
Yeah.
I do agree with you, but I feel, the bartenders in India, they have one hand tied behind their back with the restrictions that are there.
Yeah. That's,
So,
I think to me, a lot of times I might go to a place more because of the drinks, and that balance is that weightage has become equal pretty much, depending on a place having better food or drinks. And sometimes when you hit the jackpot, both are great.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna take a little break and come back to a niche thing powered by Kodak Privy League program after these short messages. Welcome back to A Niche Thing, powered by Kodak Privy League program. I'm talking to Yash and Roshni. Roshni is giggling. Yash is also giggling. You spoke about, in passing, Yash, you mentioned about Indian restaurants doing seasonal stuff, right? How does Indian fine dining work? Like, how is one at one level expecting to pay for a much better Indian food experience? Because a lot of times you hear saying, "Ye to main ghar pe kha leta."
Yeah, I feel we heard that a lot in year one of Bombay Canteen, where the idea was like if you're charging not like a regular Indian restaurant, there should be an asparagus tikka on the menu for some reason. It takes a lot of. That's why I say that she's so good at articulating, but like, you need to be persistent, but you can't be tone deaf, right? Persistent in your philosophy that, yes, we're going to be an Indian restaurant with looking at it from a different prism. We're going to use seasonal ingredients and we're going to put it in a way that it gives you maximum joy when you eat it, right? But when I say tone deaf was when the first 6 months of Bombay Canteen, our vegetarian menu wasn't great. It was because three of the founders were carnivorous. So when we used to come up with a non-veg dish, we used to just come up, take that dish, take the protein out and make a vegetarian version of it, right? Without starting from. And that's how, either if you go to a lot of veg restaurants which became non-veg, that's either how it used to work. And that's when we said, yes, we have this philosophy, but we need to be looking at what do vegetarian guests like. Now, the answer is paneer. So we said we are not going to do paneer. But what are they looking for? They're looking for creaminess. They're looking for a certain texture. How can we bring that, right? The thing that you're talking about, chintus, right? So Bombay Canteen's menu is chintu, chotas, badas. And only we see 10% of our guests reach the badas, which is the main course, is because we want you to eat the chotas, to see the depth of India in its food, right? At one point, you're like having a barley jowar salad, which highlights the millets of India. At the same time, you will be having this really nice, Hussein calls it a chip and dip, but it's basically a pumpkin longi, which is like literally like hummus. But now we are serving it with, what is that? Gurda. I'm getting the... Anyways, we're serving it with a regional vegetable and pickled onions. What is everyone's favorite winter, that green thing?
Hurda.
Hurda, with hurda.
Ponk.
Ponk.
Yeah.
Yeah, with hurda, right? Which everyone
Ponk,
loves.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's... And we are making these really nice crackers, which are made with ragi. And we are making them ourselves, right? It's about having that point of view, but keeping on evolving that point of view, but not being tone deaf. And it's taken time. Like, we've been asked this question, like presentation, like धुआं क्यों नहीं आ रहा है, or like stuff like that. And
धुआं
we're
क्यों
like,
नहीं आ रहा?
that's not who we are. And for me, fine dining is when food, beverage, service experience. I feel the hospitality and the service experience is what's missing. And that's what make, like, I feel for Bombay Canteen, I feel it's not the food, it's not the drink, it's the service experience and the people that make it different.
With Indian food and the way like chefs have been playing with it, there was this one time that I wrote a column for Mumbai Boss, Daily Power. One of them, I think, called "Can we please stop fucking around with Indian food?" Because I've literally had a sizzler which had like Hakka noodles and pav bhaji on top of that, like Hakka noodles on a sizzler plate topped with pav bhaji. For me, the sweet spot is, don't just astonish me. Astonish me with deliciousness, right?
Yeah.
Don't just like surprise me for the sake of surprising me. Like, wow, aise bhi kar sakte hain. I don't want that. I want to be like, oh, I'm not sure I will like this. And then I take the first mouthful and I'm like, I can't stop having this. This is amazing, right? And I want to come back for this. Don't what we used to say when we were in college, like, don't be different for the sake of being different.
But sadly, this has become even worse with reels. Like, we've written a column on it and then to Cutlet on the dosa guy who makes ice cream dosas.
Well, it
now.
turns out it is tasty.
Yeah. But there are so many of these now. Like it happened in restaurants where people were just, like you said, Hakka noodles with pav bhaji or spherified jalebi with rabdi smoke.
Hey, spherified jalebi. I can imagine which restaurant will do
Spherified
that.
jalebi is called bundi.
True.
That's all
Yeah.
it is.
True.
It exists, right? It's bundi.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you see now with a lot of the street vendors have realized the Insta Reel game, and so they are creating these dishes, which when you look at it looks like, oh my God, and you are on your phone looking at it. but it's gonna taste disgusting,
Yeah.
like the gulab jamun sandwich.
So see, see the ice cream dosa.
I wouldn't mind that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, hear me out.
The ice cream dosa, I think, would work because the dosa has the consistency of a cone or a wafer, like the Kerustam's wafer biscuit. So in that, there's at least some logic to it. There's some sort of like flavor pairing sensibility over there, right? But yeah, there's for example in Manik Chowk, I just wrote this piece about how like Gujaratis eat a lot of cheese. There's something called an ice cream sandwich in Manik Chowk in Ahmedabad. Okay, there's like a lot of cheese in everything. A slice of white bread with a pineapple jam, a ring of canned pineapple, ice cream, and like literally a torrent of Amul cheese and another slice of white bread on top, and that's your ice cream sandwich. Like literally, it's an ice cream cheese.
Don't tell me you want to eat that.
It does work.
Your ultra human is not going to work after that.
Hold on. But in defense of gulab jamun sandwich, picturize this. A really nice cruffin
Yeah.
A gulab jamun cruffin, if 27 Bakehouse does it, will sell out.
Try it.
You should try it at Bombay Sweet Shop.
I mean, listen, the espresso rasgulla, like who would have thought? And then you have it and you're like, my God, what did I just eat?
So
the coffee rasgulla.
The coffee rasgulla.
Yeah.
Like if you look at
coffee
principally, what it is basically a tiramisu.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's basically...
This is off the Bombay Canteen menu, what we're talking about.
I'm just saying, but having like this reels thing, like it's great. Like I wish every, like especially street food in India needs to be highlighted, but it needs to be highlighted for that sandwich guy that you were talking about before. For just the fact that these guys need to recreate something into just to get that popularity. That's what happened with restaurants. Like that same thing happened with restaurants where, for some reason my chicken lollipop came in a Lamborghini car on a remote controlled car. Right? That's exactly what happened. Like, or a phone booth came in with the table and there was like paneer tikka masala inside it.
So there is merit to innovation because a lot of our food came from that.
From a phone booth.
No, what I mean is not this. There is merit to innovation if it makes sense.
Yeah.
If it makes sense,
Exactly.
being the operating word.
Yeah. Like, you took my beloved Sindhi Arbi took and you put like mugri and made it into sev puri and I loved it.
Yeah. Also, you made a gulab nut before you talk about gulab jamun in a sandwich.
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, how did street vendors start putting melted chocolate and Amul cheese inside Vib's bread and toasting it on a sigdi inside a chimta?
Honestly, that sounds good.
It is delicious, and pretty much like most sandwich walas who have a good menu will have this on the menu, right?
Indian accent does it. 1 Michelin star right there.
Yeah, chocolate cheese. There is like, for example, we are like, oh, bhel, it's so sacrosanct, it's so Bombay, whatever. One of my favorite bhels in the world is something that you find on the streets of Bangalore. It's called mango masala bhel. If you bring it to Bombay, people will be like, don't.
Bangalore can do bhel?
Bangalore does bhel in like these large glass sort of like boxes on thelas carted around. The mango masala bhel is made with this crushed green chili that is insane and lots of grated tota puri in your bhel. It doesn't have the green chutney of Bombay's bhel, but like
But that does sound really
It is
good.
really good.
Yeah.
Grated kacha tota puri with crushed green chilies and salt and
sounds
tossed
good.
together with like...
Sounds like a raw papaya, like a raw mango
so
salad
good.
from Bangkok.
It's so good. And it's got like these crunchy fried nuts and seeds in it, right? Like peanuts and this dal, chana. It's really, really good.
I will steer the conversation back to
Yes.
a
Yeah.
little more
Yes.
fine dining.
I-
Before we end the episode, give me your whatever top picks that come to mind. Could be anywhere in the country. Fine dining, any level.
Fine dining.
Yeah. Where would you go yourself or suggest someone?
I think I've pretty much like fine dining now happens once or twice in a year for me if I've been invited by somebody who's
I'm
celebrating
talking about
something.
fine dining is our definition, right? I
So
don't
would you term Americano as fine dining?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so
Okay,
then
then yeah,
Americano
Americano.
would be-
Yeah, for sure.
Both are lists.
Americano would be also
Americano
on
for
our list.
sure. Also the table. I really liked Miss T's interpretation of fine dining
Yeah.
also. The downstairs especially was very beautifully done. Especially the bar area where you could eat and drink at the
Yeah.
same time. Loved hanging out there.
And there were no kids allowed, I think, that time, which was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Know your audience, Anish.
Roshni
No,
has
I-
3 kids, just to be clear.
Yeah, but
Kotak
sometimes...
Privy is not going to like you.
No, but sometimes I want to go out without the kids. Even I want to go out without my kids.
No,
right?
at a bar, kids shouldn't be allowed at all.
No.
Till at least 9 p.m. or something. then they should be sleeping at home.
Yeah.
No, but also, so Americano is one. I think Americano is
Izumi.
A great
Izumi.
example of great food and drinks at the same time. Izumi.
R2Z in Delhi.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't traveled much to eat in the country in the last 3 years.
I think, one good hotel is Avartana.
That was on my list. Chennai.
Yeah.
Great Indian fine dining.
Yeah.
Just
Good,
insane.
good quality.
Really good set menus.
Okay.
So the first
on
time I
my
went to Vartana, I thought this would be one gimmicky sort of an Indian accent take on
Yeah.
a 5-star hotel's take on Indian accent. Surprisingly good. And again, great service, great food, and very well priced also.
Yeah, I'm going to Bangalore next month, and I'm excited about going to Kapachaka over there, Kapachaka Kandhari, which it is. Would you think of it as fine dining? And I'm definitely going. Like, I'm very excited about that.
To me, even Comorin comes to mind. Gurgaon.
Yeah, Comorin's
Great food,
very nice. Yeah,
great drinks.
I would agree.
And again, not Indian food done right and not done differently for the sake of being different. Like they have this Malai toast,
Yeah.
which is a Malai toast, but it is so
Yeah.
well done.
But Indian accent for sure. And even I think in its old avatar and even in its new avatar, what the great thing about Indian accent is of course Chef Manish, but it's also his personality that comes through in the food and even though now it's it looks much fancier and more expensive and it's got like that little glass house in the middle of water. It still feels like a really fun, lively, vibrant, playful place, right? You don't go there feeling like somebody's going to come and there's going to be like this crisp white tablecloth and somebody's going to ask you still or sparkling, which is like, oh, it makes my skin crawl when you come and ask me that question. But okay.
Why? What happened to you with that question?
I don't like people
I
coming
think
to me
it's-
like, the whole like, what kind of water would you like, sir? Still or sparkling? I'm like, just drop
Filtered.
it. Like, just drop
Regular
it.
water, filtered.
Yeah. If I want water, I will ask you for it. Until then, just get me whatever house water.
But to be fair, one of the things that we push our team to say is ask, do you want filtered water or bottled water? Because
Yeah.
this thing of regular water,
Yeah.
what is regular water? Like, is
Yeah.
it like getting it from the rain or from the
Yeah.
drain?
Yeah.
And still we don't get it right. But this still or sparkling, like I was a robot in the hotel and this was like drilled to us because someone in Canada was writing our brand standards, is because the kids working at the Indian accent are drilled because that person, industrialist, wants Perrier and he's going to spend 1,000 rupees on it.
Yeah. I've not been asked still or sparkling, I think. But I also just generally like when I ask for water, I'm like, just give me whatever your filtered water is, your house water is. I feel like if it would be much easier if like your server came up to you and said, we have filtered water on the table. If you would like a different water, let me know. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But there are capitalists sitting up in the office who want water to be included in your average check. So, but yeah, I don't know if we gave you enough a list of
No, we need
restaurants.
more.
We
We
need
hardly,
more.
s-
Okay.
we hardly had. a
I'm not
list.
going to be that person who names my own restaurants.
I'll name your restaurants. Don't worry. Bombay Canteen, Pedro are both on my list for both food and drinks. Americano, Izumi, Comorin, Indian accent, Avartana,
The table.
The Table, Mask.
Mask, yes. Mask is definitely fine dining, but also still very, very playful.
Also upstairs in Mask, the drinks.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really well done.
Living room.
Living room.
Yeah, very nicely done. And again, astonishing me with deliciousness. I look at the drink and I'm like, oh, and then I have a sip and I'm like, my goodness, what did you do? Oh, Slink and Bardo.
Oh, Singit Bardo.
Slink and Bardo, very nice.
But Singit Bardo also becomes a party vibe at some point. But really
Yeah.
nice. You can
Yeah.
have a steak and you can party. And Santosh is there now making good drinks.
Yeah. And again, each of those rooms has a different sort of vibe, different atmosphere. So you can choose your vibe when you enter. Like, do you want to go party it up or do you want to just quietly and have like a conversation with your friends over like yummy food? Chef Ali is doing fantastic stuff. Yeah.
What about Goa? How's the fine dine scene in Goa?
I've not really gone.
For the
Gunpowder
record.
always had used to be good, but I don't know how it is now.
Gunpowder's still good.
Yeah.
For the record, is my new favorite in Goa.
yeah.
I love it. And like Buland is doing amazing things with cocktails and his ferment station. And like he's really, over the last 1 year, he's really upgraded it.
To me, when I went there and the moment I saw the speaker setup, I knew these guys are serious about vinyl because I think that's going to be another little gimmicky trend where a lot of people will say it's a vinyl night for the sake of doing it. They've done it really well.
I think Miguel's in Goa is also
Miguel's
getting on the right.
Petisco, the Japanese one that I wrote, Makutsu. I love Makuts.
I haven't been there. Where is it?
It's around the corner from Joseph's. It's like this little, Shinjuku alleyway place which has like literally 8 or 10 seats and like somewhere between izakaya and omakase, but very tiny. Yeah, really, really good food. And he does mainly the skewers, like yakitori, Makutsu's yakitori around the corner, like next to Joseph's in Fontainehouse.
One place I think which is doing great is in the conservatory. There's a hidden ramen shop in Bangalore run by Chef Kavan. I think that's doing phenomenal.
Yeah, that's good.
Superb
That's a
stuff.
good list of places.
Yeah. All right. We finally have a decent list in place. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, both of you, and all the best for Entu Cutlet.
Yeah. Thank you
Can
so
I
much.
have both of your Instagram handles?
My Instagram is at YashVecan, YashWecan.
My Instagram is my name, Roshni Bajaj, and you can identify me actually more easily from my DP, which is a red jalapeno.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please do rate us on whichever platform you're listening. It really helps a lot. And we also have a YouTube channel. If you like this episode, do write to me on social media. My handle is Anish B on Twitter and Instagram. Tune in next Tuesday for yet another fun episode of Anish Thing on the IVM Podcast app and all major podcast platforms.